Welcome to the Sigma Show. This is episode 35, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Episode 35. I am your host, Sigma. Before I let you know who's joining me today, real quick, we're just going to go over our topics for this week. First up, a couple of updates on the whole Activision Blizzard situation. It was a very deep discussion last week. We'll try to keep it a lot shorter this time. But some new developments have occurred that I think it's important we bring back up. After that, a new Pokemon, live action Pokemon, is going to be coming, possibly to Netflix. We'll talk about maybe what that could look like. And finally, Scarlett Johansson has had enough of Disney's shit, and she is suing Disney Plus for the release of Black Widow simultaneously on the Disney Plus platform as well as in theaters, because apparently that has hurt her pockets. And we'll get into what that means. Kind of just for streaming and actors and that kind of revenue stream in general, probably. But here to talk with me about those topics today are Rachel Kaiser.
Hi, I'm Rachel Kaiser, and I am a columnist at The Escapist with Casey. And yeah, so I was here last week, and I kind of got a little excited while talking, so things got a little bit heated, but in a good way. So I'm
Right.
glad to be back.
Yes, glad to have you back. Also joined by Superman Jeff
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
and the Fat Stacks.
What's going on, y'all?
Welcome
Everybody.
back to the show. Real quick, we're just going to jump straight up into these updates from the Activision Blizzard situation. Maybe not first up. I kind of forget the actual timeline. But I will say we saw that there was over 1,000. There's a signed letter condemning Activision's response to the lawsuit from, I believe, the Activision Blizzard staff. So the actual employees are trying to speak out in opposition to what the company has basically said, which somewhat represents them, I guess. So that's information that is hit there. Also, Ubisoft, a company who was also recently in the news for similar accusations of executives having misconduct, wrote an open letter addressing the Activision Blizzard situation, saying that they stand in solidarity with them, and then also calling out their company, Ubisoft, in that they haven't done enough yet. Like Ubisoft has done some things. There have been some initial firings and whatnot, and calls for solidarity and whatnot. But they claim that there are still other staff members who haven't been held to account and other things that need to be changed. And they wrote an open letter basically asking for Activision Blizzard employees to band with them and sort of creating maybe some form of union, right? So there's a lot of that talk going on. In the coming days after that, Activision Blizzard employees actually planned a walkout, which they did. It was called the ActiBlizz walkout, I think was the hashtag for it, hashtag ActiBlizz walkout. Several hundred, I want to say, employees walked out of the studio in the middle of the day. That same day, I want to say a lot of influencers and media and whatnot essentially said that they would not cover Activision Blizzard properties and that they would not log into any of those games for at least that day. Like, I know there are some people who are taking a much broader stance in terms of they're not kind of messing with that stuff until something's done in general. But a lot of people just said on this day when they do the walkout, no one's logging into anything. I'm not exactly sure how successful that was. I don't know if their servers took a dip or something. And finally, the Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick actually apologized for the company's response. I want to say the attorney or PR or HR person who was responsible for that initial response was actually fired. They got rid of that lady for what she put out. But Bobby Kotick, who is the CEO, apologizes, lays out a couple of points in terms of what he wants Activision to do going forward. And those points don't address any of the core concerns that the employees lined up in their signed letter that condemned the initial response. So,
My surprised face, by the way.
right. So, Rachel, we can start with you. Like, what is your take on kind of the aftermath of all this fallout?
Uh, I mean, it's basically what anyone could have predicted. They're starting to realize that, oh, well, this is not a story that's going to end with just a Bloomberg article. So they're
Mhm.
starting to get more. They're starting to pull it back in a little bit more. They thought they could get away with that initial response.
It
That was
seemed
not
like it.
just some. That was not just some, wildly overconfident some wildly overconfident employee or PR person who came forward and said, no, that was a representation of how the company actually felt at the time, I'm
Mm,
pretty sure. And now that people are responding with great vehemence to that, they're like, "Oh, we see that this might actually hurt us." And I think out of by the way, yeah, there's talks of unions, but the company that Activision hired to review their policies has a history of union busting.
right.
So
They did the
I'm
same thing
cut.
for
Yeah,
Amazon. I want to
yeah,
say,
Amazon.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Amazon.
Wilmer Hale, yeah.
yep,
So and also, the people who walked out, Blizzard came out afterwards and said we're actually giving those employees paid time off. So it's their way of trying to control what the walkout was about, I'm going to say. So the company is trying as hard as it can to feign being on the workers' side while not actually being on the workers' side. And but looking at the list of things that Bobby Kotick didn't address, well, just a limited selection of them because there's a lot of stuff he didn't address.
hmm
But I think the part that I noticed, and this is something that I think we were talking last week in terms of what could actually be done to salvage the situation or to make the whole system better for everyone. And there is one thing I noticed in there that I remember has come up again and again whenever this discussion happens, and that's forced arbitration. And that's
yes,
something that I think if we really wanted, if we wanted to have a single goal that would make the entire industry better for everyone, that as a thing to get rid of or to change, it would be forced arbitration because that is one of the things that keeps people from being comfortable reporting stuff like this is because they can't go to the police with something like this because they would get fired for that. I think I don't know the exact details of the forced arbitration clause at Activision Blizzard, but I'm willing to bet a lot of Activision Blizzard employees don't either. So I'm willing to bet they probably were scared into silence by the idea that the only people who are going to be hearing their complaints are people within the very same company they are
that they're complaining
whose
about.
power they are afraid of and who are they are complaining about. So if I saw one thing in there that I thought, okay, if people actually want to commit to making the whole system better for everyone, that is one policy that should go for everybody.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The forced arbitration thing is literally the company stopping anyone from suing them because in this country at least, that's kind of the main way to get at any powerful entity is through the courts. Like
Right.
you prove that they've broken a law and you make them pay through the nose for their crime. Like
Right.
you can get a lot of money out of a company if you can prove that they damaged you in some way. And like they're afraid of lawsuits. Like big corporations are afraid of the courts. So that's
Well, that
why
was
that
the
exists in the first place.
yeah, that was the deal with Riot Games, wasn't it? Because way back Riot Games
Yes,
was one of the
because they
other
also
companies
did
that dealt.
the walkout.
Yeah, that was another big that was one of the big sticking points there was that they really wanted Riot Games to get rid of forced arbitration because that was one of the things keeping people within their company from speaking out about the problems. I
True.
don't recall if they did or not.
Yeah, that story kind of petered out a little bit because it was the same. It was kind of the same, almost the exact same deal where like it was bringing up the union talk, and people were trying to put energy. And I want to say there was a particular company or organization that was trying to latch on to the Riot employees and say like, "Hey, talk to us because we're trying to build a union for like the games industry." But yeah, I can't I haven't seen any more info from that since. So either they're flying on the radar or like maybe it all fell apart, unfortunately. But I mean, Jeff, how about you? Like, what's your take from kind of all the
Um,
reactions to all the news?
I see a lot of like different news companies like Bungie. They put out like a kind of like an open letter, not really so much addressing the situation, but letting everybody know where their stance is on
Hmm.
this particular topic. Like, hey, we don't tolerate any discrimination, sexual wise or race based, anything like that. We try to provide a healthy work environment. And I think they did that more so because of their past relationship with Activision, and they didn't want
Mm,
people to think it was,
that they
kind of a
were
joke.
connected.
Yeah, so they wanted to make sure to put out that letter to let people know, hey, we ain't doing that over here. That's not something we do. We're on the up and up, just so you know. And from everything we've seen, they seem to be exactly what they said. We haven't seen anything yet pop out from Bungie over the years. I think there was like one mention of like overworking or something like that. Um, I think that was Bungie, if I'm not mistaken. No, actually, I think that was Ubisoft. Never mind. So yeah, they pretty much what they're saying is kind of, I believe, what they're doing so far. So, and I think a lot of companies are doing that, letting everybody know, hey, just because that's going on over there doesn't mean that's what we're doing here. We're doing things the right way over here. So it's good to see that some companies are following the letter of common sense and common decency.
I mean,
Well,
that's the hope, right? But
yeah, I
like,
mean, well,
yeah, we really won't know unless,
something comes out,
right?
but
Yeah,
it's kind of the same
because
thing.
everyone's gonna say that
In-
until all
Innocent,
the proof
innocent,
gets put in front of
yeah,
them.
but and that's the same thing. Innocent until proven guilty. So we assume they're doing the right things until something comes out to prove otherwise. We don't want to
Yeah,
assume
yeah.
somebody's doing the wrong thing just because somebody else is doing the wrong thing. We want to assume that they're doing the right thing unless something else comes out to say otherwise. Then
I mean, I see what you're saying. Fastax, how about you? Like, how are you taking all this? You weren't part of the discussion last week, but I'm sure you've been hearing about all
Yeah.
of the Activision Blizzard stuff. So, like, what is your take?
My take is gonna be a little different. uh, I'm gonna look on the money side because if you want to have change, hurt companies by their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a way, unless and I look at it like this, right? Shareholders own shareholders and these board members own these companies. If you really want to hit them hard, that's where you hit it at. Want to make a change, you do it up there because of the fact that a lot of the times every company has a standard practice, a standard this. Because when you go for a job, they tell you these are what the rules are. This, and this. This is what you can do if this, and this happens. A lot of the times you don't hear anything until that person gets fired, and then everything comes out about that company. You know what I mean? So, uh, I think if you really want change to happen, people's gonna have to force change up in that area because a lot of the times it's just cookie cutter stuff. A lot of the times it's just like this is standard procedure what we're gonna put out because this has happened, and we're just gonna say, hey, we're gonna have more classes, have more this, have more that,
Mm-hmm.
and call it a day. And then after a time, it just blows.
So, I mean,
So
what do you like? How do you think is the best way to go about hurting their pockets then? Because like Call of Duty, despite everyone being so tired of it, still sells like it's like the best selling game every single year. It's like there's an audience who just doesn't care about anything outside of the fact that there's a new Call of Duty coming, right? Like they're not going to pay attention to any of this stuff for the most part. They're just going
right,
to give them their money, right? So like how
and
would we who are affected by this stuff, how do we kind of target their pockets? That's because that was something I think we struggled with trying to find an answer to. Like, how do we, as like kind of the little guy, try and hold a company that big and powerful accountable?
and see that's the thing. You are going to have to get a lot of people involved. That's the thing. It has to be a chain, kind of like a chain gang. Like everybody has to be linked. You have to, say, hey, look, we're trying to do this, and that, and people, are gonna have to come together and say, we want change as a whole. Now, if you have the whole industry doing this, all the employees doing this, all these people that buy these games are doing this, that is gonna affect a whole lot of change versus a small number. And I think until you get a broader amount of people involved where you can literally just affect that change, I think a lot of the times it's gonna get swept under the rug. Unfortunately, and that's just the sad
No, I
part
think you're
about
right.
it.
Yeah, just like the thing with Riot we mentioned, like it did seem to kind of just fade away. Like maybe there wasn't a big enough groundswell surrounding that. Like Riot Games is a big company. Like they're behind a very popular game, but that may also hurt them because the fan base who's paying attention may really just be fans of the game and don't want the game to go away or get bad press or whatnot. So like the sooner the bad part of the fun thing that they love kind of disappears, the better for them, right? Rather than maybe foregoing the thing you love, like not playing the game, not buying the product to try and affect change at the company. It's like it it's tough to get that groundswell, I feel like.
It is, and I'm gonna use this as an example. Um, when Martin Luther King told, uh, back in the day when he told everybody, "Hey, do not take public transportation, walk." When that public transportation in the South took a serious hit money wise, they were like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." You can't be no, and when it got to that point is when change started happening. So it's just gonna have to take that type of a volume, that type of a money hit from
No,
all
you're absolutely
different
right.
to hit that for people to be like, oh well, looks like we're gonna have to change this business model because this ain't happening. Change rules. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. I mean, there are a lot of companies. Okay, I'll give you another example. Look at Google. Remember, Google had something going on here not too long ago with the CEO, and you haven't really heard much about it either.
Yeah, I don't think I heard the first
After,
part. What did
yeah,
Google have going on?
Google had some stuff going on with them similar in with the whole harassment issues and stuff like that, and inequality and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But because Google is a huge company, see, everybody uses Google. Everybody's invested in Google. So sometimes you'll hear a blip of certain stories, and then all of a sudden it's gone because you just don't have that volume to kind of carry it for certain change. Because they'll same thing. They'll be like, well, we'll do more classes, we'll do this, we'll do that, and we'll try to affect change and this and that, and then they'll call it a day.
Or they'll pay people and then put out an NDA like, oh well, you got this money, you can't talk about this that happened, and we've seen that all over the place with like politicians and different companies. Where they'll get sued for something that happened, they'll pay the money and be like, well, you got paid, can't speak about this. So there could be more instances we just don't even know of.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that lawyers and this isn't that they do that's under the table or whatever the case may be. Like you said, like a lot of us don't know about. So we won't ever know the full ins and outs. And that's kind of like the thing when you sign up to work for a lot of these companies. Like there is a spider web of stuff that they can do to, if this happens, well, we got to do this and this to kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
to protect themselves and their interests over
right.
like any of the actual staff, which is sad. Lampy in the chat has something to add. He says it's not just money. Legislation is also effective. You have elected officials who are not doing anything to protect you in a lot of states and at the federal levels. California is one of the most forward on this stuff, though. I like Lampy's right. Like legislation, the law, again, like the courts and stuff, like that is effective in holding companies to task. But the money that these companies have and can throw around can influence that stuff, which is what kind of
Yeah.
makes it nowhere near as effective as it should be in this country in particular. That was something we went into last week as well. We won't retread those steps, but like it's what makes it so rough to affect change. Like Fazak is saying, like you're right. If enough people band together, that's buying power, and that will hit them in the pockets if they can get on one accord and stuff. But it's so tough to do, so tough to organize, and like the amount of motivation you need. Sadly, it tends to be based around like the traumatic. Like it has to be something that is really bad and affecting, like the stories coming out of Activision Blizzard, to get a big number of people to feel like they have to act, right?
But what they need to do is just like food places need to have a food license. You got to have a liquor license to sell liquor. There should be not just some type of mandate or some type of criteria that companies have to meet to continue to do business. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a healthy work environment. There's these amount of things going on in your business or whatever it is. Until these things are fixed, you can't then do business. It's just that simple. And
I mean,
those things
you
will
would
get
hope you would hope it was that simple, but
either they fix
other
it or they won't
people,
be able to do business. That's just how it is.
but
Well, and then Activision can do what it threatened to do and just say, "Hey, we're going to leave the state of
Oh, I don't mean
California."
business just in
Flounce.
California. I mean
Yeah.
business in general. Like that
Oh,
should
I
be like
know, I know.
but
a blink.
that business that they can't do, some of the people making those laws want a piece of that business. Like they want
Well,
that
that's what I'm
money or they
saying.
depend
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that
yeah,
money.
yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
it gets so tangled and messy. Because they're like, we could stop them from doing business for doing this, but then how would I buy my yacht? It's like like that's kind of how it ends up being. So like it's
Unfortunately.
really difficult. Yeah, it's way too
Yeah.
complicated and sketchy of a system.
But this is why I said before, you'll have to Lampy just said it, like elected officials. Who elects these officials? People. You know what I mean? Who's
Or money.
filtering all this money? The buyers. So what's
Mm-hmm.
gonna stop all this nonsense? is if everybody comes on the same page, which unfortunately,
Yeah, it's an entirely
yeah,
different issue.
I
that's a whole different ball game.
yeah, it's there. We've been focused solely on the company at this point, but I do have to question the culture around games and whether you could ever convince the primary, let's just call it the typical buyer of Call of Duty, whether you could ever convince them to care about the plight of women who are being harassed while making games, women who are underpaid while making games, men who are put in that environment of toxic masculinity, because other stories have come out that said men were underpaid and harassed as well. And it's just, whether they will ever care that this much blood, for lack of a better term, went into the game that they're playing. And I the fact that a lot of the people who work for Activision Blizzards are the product of that culture, as evidenced by the fact that most of them sat around drinking beer and playing video games when they should have been working. But the fact that they're part of they're born from that culture. They are not separate from the culture of gamers itself. So the fact that I think a large part of gamers will never be convinced to care about this. I want to believe better about gamers, but the cynical part of me is not sure that's possible to get that many gamers to care about the plight of women and women of color, people of color, and just the minorities in the games industry.
Yeah, that's a very real thing. And again, it's sad. So I don't want to bring I don't want to bring the podcast like real far down, like especially like right at the beginning. But it's a reality. It's something that we do need to recognize, and talk about whenever possible. So I I hope this doesn't kind of disappear, but the chances that it will are kind of high.
Well, I
Like
mean,
that's just
we have a special power here too.
mhm.
I mean, it's within our power to keep talking about it.
That's true.
So,
Yeah,
we have, I mean, this is your show, but you have an audience here of people who will know, who are, they won't forget if you talk about it. So, it's not it may not seem like a big deal, but I mean, it's better than just ignoring the problem.
true. That's also a good point. Yeah, like at any level, if you feel compelled, do what you can, right? And like at this level, this is what we can do, right? Is keep bringing it up, keep holding them to task. And you know what? Hopefully, we can affect change. Like we'll end on an optimistic note for this story as we move on to our next one. Unless anyone has any final thoughts on the situation before we move on. No. Yes. No. All right. All right. All right. So we'll move over on to our next topic here. Pokemon is getting a live action series that's going to be in development at Netflix. So Netflix original series. Apparently, this is supposed to be in the vein of like Detective Pikachu. I think it's actually a Detective Pikachu story, but I don't think it's taking directly from the movie.
No, it's not affiliated with the movie. It's its own independent production.
But it is
It,
another Detective
it,
Pikachu thing.
it doesn't say, just saying it's
No?
aiming to replicate Detective Pikachu. That could
Okay.
mean the look. That could mean the story. That could mean a plethora of things. I would guess it means the look because that live action look just worked so well for the movie.
Yeah, they did pull it off in that instance. So I mean, are any of you guys excited about this? Like, let's start there.
Um,
Oh,
you go first, Jeff.
oh, you can go.
Uh, I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other. I really like Detective Pikachu, but my first thought when they say we're developing a live action Pokemon movie is, well, the whole thing that everyone loved about Detective Pikachu, well, I should say I loved about Detective Pikachu, was Detective Pikachu. I mean, the whole world was cool and all, and I mean, I love seeing the Pokemon translated into live action in an urban environment, coexisting with humans. All really cool. Enjoyed that, but what I enjoyed most about watching the movie, and the only reason I've ever rewatched it, is to watch the banter between Justice Smith and Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu, and that's not really an element in like common Pokemon mythos.
Hmm.
So I do wonder if maybe they're starting from a position that they can't really replicate.
That makes sense. Yeah, if they're not gonna continue that story, which honestly was a good story. Like I like the premise of Detective Pikachu. It made more
Mhm.
sense to make that into a movie than to just try and adapt the entire Pokemon mythos, right? Like they started small, well, relatively small, because it was still kind of like this world-ending thing that they had to stop. But it was a more personal situation. Like they didn't have to get into the mechanics of like what a trainer is, like what the Elite Four is, and the Pokemon League, and all that stuff. It was like just kind of a very personal story that had Pokemon in it.
Right.
So if they maybe are looking to do something like that, where maybe it's not about Detective Pikachu, but it's just some other story, live action related to Pokemon. I mean, not that it has to be live action, but that's the choice that they're making. But if it's just a small story involving Pokemon, I think it could work, because Pokemon is really popular and can be fun and cool like Detective Pikachu was.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jeff? Excited?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be good. Like Richard said, Ryan Reynolds was the best part of Detective Pikachu. I'm wondering if they're gonna go with a talking Pokemon, or they're gonna go back to the tried and true. Pokemon don't talk besides their normal vocabulary, and you'll have some trainers and stuff like that. I think it does need to be a more personal story. I did like that. Like, I don't want to see Ash. I don't. I definitely don't. So like, let's leave Ash wherever Ash is. Like, I want this to be like, I guess, a separate Pokemon world. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even want to see Ash show up. Like, just
You don't
do a
even want to
different
hear
story.
about Ash. Like, hey, there's this 10-year-old
Yeah.
kicking ass all
Man,
over the
like,
Johto
yeah.
League.
Ash been around for about 15 years now. We need something else.
Still 10 years old.
Right? Never grew up. But it could be cool. They put a big emphasis on like the battles and like I said, a personal connection with the story, and definitely is going to depend on who the story focuses on. That's going to be the biggest thing. It has to be a character that people are going to kind of endear themselves to. It can't just be some random low smo who's just wants to be a Pokemon master. It's going to have to be something else that we haven't seen yet. But if it's like Detective Pikachu and the aesthetic is the same, I think it could work. I did enjoy how they looked. Like even that one scene with Charizard and Pikachu battling in the little dome or whatever it was, that was pretty cool. So stuff like that, the moves looked really flashy and unique, and they definitely looked like something the way they would translate from the cartoon or the game to live action. So they did a good job with it. It's not like a lot of other anime that translate to live action and just looks really bad. I think I remember the last one I saw was the Full Metal Alchemist one. That was just horrible.
I don't know. I kind of liked the Full Metal Alchemist movie.
Oh,
The characters definitely looked like they were cosplaying rather than that they were the characters.
Right.
But I thought they didn't do a terrible job just going through the highlights of that story.
They changed the story, and it made no sense at the end.
Well, they didn't finish it, right? It was like the first third maybe of like that story. They didn't get to the end of it.
Well, what ended wasn't good because they usually, and this is a side bend, usually those little doll things show up at the end when they started putting the human souls in it. They showed up in this first third.
Yeah, okay. I know. Yeah, they pushed that stuff to much earlier, but
yeah, but and it shows that the showrunner is the one who's working on Lucifer, and they're pushing. And we already knew about the Cowboy Bebop one, but there's a One Piece one coming out, and I don't know if I want that.
Bruh, I have so much strong feelings with this nonsense. Oh my god. And I'm a big anime guy. A huge anime guy. And I can suggest other anime shows that would be so much more suitable and easier to go live action versus
One Piece.
These fan favorites trying to I understand CGI and technology has come a long way, but bruh, leave certain anime alone. It belongs in anime only. Because
some stuff just doesn't translate across mediums.
It really don't.
So you're not a fan of the Detective? I'm not Detective Pikachu. The live action Pokemon idea in general. Like, you think it's a bad fit?
To me personally, all right. Number one, I didn't see the movie. I saw pieces here and there, right? So I cannot really talk about that versus certain anime, which is similar. But when it comes to me personally, yes, I've watched Pokemon, I've seen all the stuff, all that. But if you're going to do a take on Pokemon, this is just my personal opinion, do it on Team Rocket.
I was thinking the same thing, yo. I was thinking the exact same thing.
The reason why, because you have a lot of stuff you can go on the Team Rocket side and still have the Pokemon, because Team Rocket, you could either go a protagonist as good or bad. Take your pick. Or you can leave them in the middle, which one way or the next. But if you're gonna do a series on Pokemon, you can focus on Team Rocket alone, and that can encircle almost everything.
Yeah, you're
You know
right.
what I mean? And still get away with it. But that's just my opinion. Now, when it comes to anime movies, all right, Cowboy Bebop, that's easy to do. Because you don't have nothing flashy. They need to stop with the One Piece. Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist, they should have stopped because that has way too much stuff, technology, CGI wise, you're trying to get away with. I can say Outlaw Star. A lot of if y'all old heads know what Outlaw Star is, it's similar to Cowboy Bebop. Get away with that. Black Lagoon. If y'all haven't seen Black Lagoon, it's an old head anime too.
Yeah, I've actually watched most of that recently.
Right, so you can turn Black Lagoon into an actual actual anime, or even into a movie.
Yeah, that would make a pretty decent movie, I think.
Right, and that would have actually a strong female lead in there with 2 hands. So, I mean,
but it's the popularity they're chasing, right? Like you're not gonna do a Black Lagoon movie unless it was a passion project and you really have like a strong idea for it. Well, they're doing a live action Pokemon movie, TV show on Netflix because Pokemon sells like $1 billion wherever you put it.
Yes.
I mean, if you have the actors though, you can pull it off. I mean, there are a lot of shows on Netflix that people are watching that are underrated, and people are like, oh, but this show is pretty good for what it is.
But I mean, they don't want pretty good. They don't care whether it's good or not. They just want people to watch it.
Oh God, that's the problem. Because like One Piece, you have to do it good. It's been around for so long. Like there's a lot on that person's shoulders that make. Oh my
gosh,
good.
Yeah.
If it's bad, just forget about it. Like I watched Rurouni Kenshin yesterday, and that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, those Rurouni Kenshin movies aren't bad.
Yeah,
Rurouni Kenshin doesn't have a lot of anime action other than because it's martial arts, sword play. You don't have like look what they tried to do to Dragon Ball Z. Like no
Dynasty Warriors. That was definitely like a C.
You know what I mean?
They had the flashy moves in there.
Right. I mean, like the last Airbender. I mean, I felt some type of way that there's just too much.
There was something else.
That was M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, like
he was trying to put his own stamp on stuff.
I don't know if the fact that it was
Ghost in the Shell as a translation as a segue to the next topic when we get there.
Ghost in the Shell. What's the other one? The Aeon Flux.
God.
Right.
They tried to pull off Aeon Flux. Like, bruh, just
that did not translate well at all. I see. It's one of those cases where I see what you're going for. But it's not. You cannot physically translate this into another medium and have the message remain intact.
Right. I mean, and this is why I say, and I use Black Lagoon as a perfect example, because they're mercenaries. You have corrupted officials in there. A lot of things that people can relate to in that anime. It's not like they were good guys. It's like what they did for a company, for business, for making money. You know what I mean? So
it's a very simple premise, Black Lagoon, right? So so to turn that into like, because it's kind of aping like live action stuff itself,
right?
Like it's like a crime drama is what that thing is.
Right. The biggest thing is they try to fit that whole series story into that one movie, as opposed to it being like a side story with the same characters, like almost like a filler episode, but actually good. You know what I'm saying? But the problem is they should like Bleach. I thought the characters design was great. All the characters looked really good, but they tried to fit that whole first season almost into that one movie, and that's just not going to happen. You're not going to flesh all that stuff out very evenly. It just doesn't work in a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, you will lose a lot, but I didn't think the Bleach live action movie was that bad either. I thought that one was
it wasn't horrible,
pretty well done.
But I obviously critiqued it, because there were some things that just didn't flow good. But, the characters looked amazing. I thought they did a great job besides Byakuya. He just looked a little bad. He looked kind of bad.
Blue, I see you in the chat, says Sup Squad. And Lampy was suggesting casting Jeff in I guess the Pokemon.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you mean the Pokemon live act. Yes, that would work.
Yeah, I get a scar here. I can be like the villain. Yeah, that works.
You could be a Pokemon, I think.
Which Pokemon?
Man. Oh,
I don't know, Trubbish.
I mean, another anime I would love to see in a live action film that's actually doable and I would hate to say it, but Berserk. I would love to
Berserk, yeah,
see that in a
Berserk
Berserk.
would be good.
Yeah, it you would have to do a little tweaking here and there, but I think Berserk would be a serious live action.
Yeah,
I
Berserk
mean,
would be good.
it'd
Or
have to be rated
Gintama.
R though.
I think Gintama would be good too.
Gintama would be more of a like a comedy type deal, but yeah, you could
Yeah.
probably pull away with that
Mhm.
too, because there's really no like excess
Yeah.
CGI you got to worry about.
No super
So
flashy moves or
But
anything like that.
isn't the CGI stuff usually just like whether that hits or not is usually just based on the budget? Like, cause you can
That's the thing.
so like
Remember how much the Flash was just to show Gorilla Grodd? Like they had to show him sparingly. Like that's how much it cost.
yeah, and they had
So you
to
can tell.
stop showing you
Yeah.
the dire wolves in Game of Thrones because they were like super
Right.
expensive.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you're right. Like it's definitely easier to do on a lower budget if you don't have to mess with a bunch of CGI. But like, I mean, this is Pokemon we're talking about here, right? And Netflix. Do you think they'll be given a budget to do these Pokemon right? Because they are trying to emulate that movie, which apparently got enough money to do those Pokemon right.
They're gonna have to because I don't think Netflix wants to be the one to do Pokemon bad and do wrong. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to do wrong by Pokemon. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
Yeah.
you're the one place to mess up Pokemon. Like, really? Like everything they put out. Yeah, Pokemon Unite's been doing really good.
Yeah,
You
Pokemon
got
Go like several
yeah,
billion dollars.
Pokemon
Pokemon
Snap.
Go, yeah, just kind of legitimized mobile gaming.
So,
And
like, I'm sure they put a lot of money behind this.
potential idea for how this could work.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things about Detective Pikachu that not Detective Pikachu himself, like if you set that aside, one of the things about the movie that was actually really good was that it sort of it put the Pokemon out there in the world. It was an it was a world where Pokemon sort of freely intermingled with humans. They're not just trapped in Pokeballs all the time. And I think that sort of like from a purely visual standpoint, that was very appealing that you could just look around and see just like, well, here's I think what was it, Snorlax just plopped in the middle of traffic
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
while a Machamp is just like redirecting traffic around it, trying to like that was actually like one of the few visual delights of that movie, just being able to see Pokemon. And I think if they really want to go this route and have it work and uh I mean, it's all going to be in the script, like we said. It's all going to be in coming up with a good story with good characters and good dialogue, and it's all going to be on who they focus on. But I think if they want to replicate that sort of like what was really delightful about that movie, then they'll put the Pokemon out there. They're not just going to have it be like 90% human characters and then like a little bit of
Mhm.
Pokemon just to make sure that the license still is they can
Mm-hmm.
keep the license and have it legitimately be called Pokemon.
And,
That
and
makes sense. Yeah.
and I think that will depend on the budget they have because like every
Exactly.
episode that has filled the streets of Pokemon will be like millions of millions of dollars worth of animation.
mhm.
So yeah,
Do
like
we
that.
need
Yeah,
another
they got to
Death
balance
Note?
it. But I don't know. Yeah.
Hence,
Oh, go ahead. Fast X.
no, I was just gonna say. Hence why we talked about looking at from the Team Rocket perspective. That will probably be more budget effective because you like I said, you can do that storyline with the whole um Detective Pikachu and how they did it from what I've seen, the clips that I've seen. I'm like, okay, so what happens if you take these protagonists and like turn it into this story with this type of background with that type of because you can still have all the Pokemon out
Mhm.
there, play like, well, they're the bad guys, and oh well, there's probably another bigger bad guy somewhere, and they're just kind of like the middleman. You know what I
Right.
mean? So like you can really expand that out for an extremely long period of series if you wanted to.
No, I agree with that. I was thinking the exact same thing, like some sort of origin story or side story
Mhm.
that is
Like a
just
Charmander killed your mother or something. That would be like
a
a good place.
Charmander did, like
Yeah,
like.
killed your mother.
Charmander? I mean,
She
I
was
think
she was
the
minding her
villains
business.
the villains of every I can't even talk. It's too funny.
This man said Charmander.
But I mean, the villains of every Pokemon story are sort of like molded to fit the world they live in. And
Mhm.
in Detective Pikachu itself, I mean, this whole urban environment, hyper-capitalist world, the villain was the head of a big corporation. So that's kind of that was a little on the nose, but I think if you wanted to be in that same world, you could You could do Team Rocket in that way, or if you wanted to do it from Team Rocket's perspective, maybe them trying to make it in that sort of environment
Make
where
him a
we're in the
sympathetic
transition
villain.
period of like Pokemon being and no longer being like a commodity, if you will. That's the best I can come up with.
Make him like a uh oh my god, a resistance fighters or something like
Some
that. Make them like
something
fighting
like that.
against like Big Brother. That'd be pretty
Something like
cool.
that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, more like not serious Pokemon stories, but like people taking Pokemon stories seriously, I guess is the way to phrase that. I'm a fan of. Like, because I did like the anime a bunch, have not really watched it or paid attention to it in several years, especially not the games. Like, I don't think the games have stories worth paying attention to at all. But like, I do like that world. I think it's a cool world. I think the monster designs are cool for the most part. So yeah, like tell us more stuff like Detective Pikachu, which they have literally said because they want to emulate that kind of success. I'm excited for it to see how that turns out.
Right. Because if you read the manga is actually a lot darker than
Right, yeah,
the
and they
yeah.
made what was that the anime called that was trying to follow that story, like the story of Red or whatever.
Oh, I did see that. That
Like
was on Journeys, Pokemon Journeys. It was on Hulu.
yes, it was on Hulu, but yeah, the
Yeah.
name I guess Journeys was it. But I watched some of that and that wasn't bad.
Mm-mm. And
But
I did a good job of recapping the whole first game. It
mhm.
went through the whole thing in like a couple episodes, which wasn't bad.
But yeah, but that was
Manga's
following
always
like the
darker.
game,
Yeah, I
like
followed the game.
Leaf Green or whatever, and
It
not
followed the culmination of the games, but you were the main character, Red,
yeah,
and
you
you
were
kind of
Red,
yeah.
but like Red is the main character in that darker manga. That's what I was hoping we would see, and I don't know if they like fused those things together or if it was really just that first game that they were trying to hit the beats of. But either way, just give me more Pokemon stuff. It's fine. I won't play the games anymore, but I'll watch it.
God, that's a bold statement.
More Pokemon, more Pokemon.
Do it, you
I'm
cowards.
we're saying it. That's what Netflix wants too.
All right, so if there's nothing else left on this, we'll move on to our final topic. Scarlett Johansson is in the news because she is suing Disney over apparently the release of Black Widow to Disney Plus. It came out on their Premier Access tier, which means you pay like an additional $30 to actually watch that movie while it's simultaneously in theaters, so you don't have to go to theaters. And I think after about a month or so, it's on the regular Disney Plus streaming service.
Mhm.
But because of this, apparently, since her contract had her pay dictated by a certain amount of box office revenue, they essentially cut a ton of potential revenue out of her potential pay. And she is now suing, saying that they essentially screwed her out of the money she was owed for this. I did see some talk that she's an executive producer, which means she put up some money, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. Like, you can just give someone an executive producer credit. I don't think they have to do anything other than their job. So, but I don't know for sure. Like, maybe she did put up some money. But either way, she has not been paid as much as she feels she has. Honey Money in chat is saying Emma Stone's thinking about doing it too for Cruella. And ScarJo might have lost up to $50 million as a result of Disney's decision. What are you guys' initial reactions to kind of seeing this?
Um, my initial thing was obviously yes, we're in a pandemic. Same thing with Cruella, we were in a pandemic. Um, but if their contract stated that, hey, my money, what I get back is based off of how the movie does. I mean, we've seen that with like Forrest Gump, where um Tom Hanks put in a bunch of his own money, but the movie did so well, he made like tenfolds that back. This was a different situation. Here's the thing. I felt like Disney should have renegotiated to kind of account for the money that they made on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because here's the thing, and then here's the thing, it was never going to do that great in theaters. It just wasn't. I feel like a lot of people who stayed at home to watch it were people who weren't going to go to the theaters to see it to begin with. Like a buddy who works with me, I was like, yeah, he watched it at home. I said, well, let me ask you a question. If you didn't watch it at home, were you going to go see it in theaters? He said, yeah, no, probably not. I'm not ready to start going to theaters again. Okay, cool, that's fair. But Disney should have done right by her. She's been with them for like since like 2010. This has
Mm.
been a long, long relationship that she's been in the MCU. Hey, we're going to do a simultaneous release, but to make up for some of the money you would have lost, we'll incorporate the home numbers into the box office numbers to kind of give you some of your money back for what you would have lost. Now, also, no offense, but the movie wasn't the best. So, but we'll never know how it would have did in theaters solely because it was a simultaneous release. So I feel like they should have, and I think Kevin Feige even told them, hey, pay her the money.
Yeah, I think he did come out and say
Yeah,
that
like,
he was disappointed in.
yeah, that they didn't pay her to
Yeah.
begin with. Like, just give her the money. It's not that big of a deal. You can't treat your talent like this because other talent is paying attention to this. Like, hey, this is we're not doing right by people. We're just trying to be kind of greedy. Everybody's going to see that. And you got a lot of big talent working for you where you don't want to start building issues with getting new talent in. I think if Kevin Feige's running the MCU, he should have been the one who made the decision whether to account for those streaming numbers or not to. When you have somebody else who has nothing to do with that making that decision, that's when that becomes an issue.
Well, I think the people who made that decision deal with exactly that part. How
exactly.
do we pay people and where do the products go? But like Kevin Feige's worrying about, I guess, more the creative stuff, I think, and not necessarily getting everybody paid. So like that's the disconnect maybe.
Yeah, that's who would be dealing with the people, and that's who would be able to better judge what they should do. Someone who has this man has built a whole MCU. You tell me he can't, without the MCU, Disney wouldn't be doing as great as it's doing now. And I think they should kind of took some of that into account. Let's pay the people who help make us a success what they deserve and not try to shortchange them.
I think that this was actually an issue with HBO Max when they announced they were releasing all of their things onto HBO Max when HBO announced that. And they sort of implied, they didn't come out and say it, that it was parent company AT&T that sort of made that decision on their behalf, and they sort of let HBO take the fall for it. But I remember at the time that Christopher Nolan came out and he was very against putting Tenet on streaming services because he was adamant that Tenet needed to be experienced in theaters. And we sort of found out afterwards that the real issue everyone was really mad about was the fact that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot got extra money to put Wonder Woman 1984 on streaming services, and they didn't. And I can't help but think I'm crossing franchises here, but I can't help but think a little Wonder Woman money might have solved this. I really don't think you need to necessarily because I don't know how much premiere numbers did. I do think that this was Disney's final experiment in the series of to see how premieres did, because they did it with Soul, they did it with Raya and the Last Dragon, they did it with Mulan, which I don't know I don't know how the numbers were on Mulan, but I'm willing to bet it was not great.
Yeah, it didn't seem. Yeah, I get the impression it didn't do well.
Yeah, so this was them sort of testing the waters with progressively bigger and more important projects to them. And doing it with an MCU film was the ultimate test to see how many people would pay for a premiere as opposed to waiting for it to show up on the streaming service a few months down the line. And I don't think, and now Disney is not, I think it was ScarJo's lawyers who came out and said Disney is doing this just to boost Disney Plus, and they're using COVID as an excuse. And I think that's a little bit, I do find that a little bit tone deaf to say they're using COVID as an excuse. COVID's still here. I mean, and I will say, I saw Black Widow in the theaters not too long ago. I actually, my family and I actually decided to make that our first excursion back out into the world. So, I mean, I don't want to sit, so when I say, I think that it would be understandable, like Jeff said, if there were a lot of people who are just not going to go see it in theaters. I think they also need to understand that, because I think saying that releasing it on Premiere substantially hurt the movie's box office numbers. I think that's assuming facts, not an evidence there.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing a lot of Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, so
I love it.
That is making
anime. I love that anime, by the way.
I've only seen one episode of the anime, but it's very game-like. But
No, that's a great point because I also watched it in theaters, and it was because the premiere access version was too expensive. Like I
mm,
would have preferred to watch it at home, but they make it a certain amount to sort of entice you towards the theaters if you really do want to just go see it, right?
mhm,
But there's something about it that does feel insidious. Like Jeff was saying, like why don't you just pay the woman for her time?
mhm.
I think like Disney knew for a fact that they get cut a break in terms of having to pay a certain amount of money out because they were foregoing theater costs and kind of splitting the difference somewhat because all the premiere access stuff goes straight to Disney. Like they don't have a contract in place to pay actors or studios, I guess, from the streaming side because it just didn't exist at the time when that stuff was penned. So I do think someone up there thought that they could get away with this as a loophole. They're like, oh, well, if we do it this way, we make more money on this side and pay less people on that side.
Yeah, I
And
think I think what you're saying is they haven't had to do that. They haven't had to pay anyone extra money for Premier Access up to this point,
mhm,
is what you mean, because like they didn't do it for Soul. They didn't pay the directors or producers or stars of Soul extra money for that movie being on Premier Access. They didn't do it with Cruella, like Honey pointed out. They didn't pay Emma Stone any extra money for her movie being on Premier Access. So when Scarlett Johansson comes out and says, well, you need to pay me extra money because, this hurt my film's ticket sales, and they haven't done that up to this point. So if they do that now, it's opening doors for everybody else to come in and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, why didn't you pay us extra for that?" That's not fair.
yeah, and I think they know that is the point I'm trying to
Mhm.
make. Like they know it's not
Yeah.
fair. They were hoping to get away with it because they've
Yep.
been
Mm,
getting away with it so far. Like that.
right.
Yeah.
But the other thing is like, why would they be that petty? Is it that they're that greedy, or is it that Disney Plus costs just a ton of money to run, and like they really do want to try and recoup as much as possible to keep it going? Like I don't know.
It's hard to say. I mean, well, with Disney Plus, I think one of the plus sides of that is, no pun intended, is that Disney owns everything that is on Disney Plus.
Hmm.
Mm.
So costs are purely operating costs. Like they don't have to pay licensing to have
Yeah, that's true.
other companies' properties on their streaming site. And I am waiting for the day that Disney Plus and Hulu finally combine and make one singular homogenous Disney entity. That's going to be a fun day. But I think it comes down to that Disney sort of trickled out Disney Plus premiere stuff, and it never and starting with projects where compensation and extra compensation never would have come up. I don't think that ever would have come up for Mulan, for example.
Hmm.
And so by and it trickles out a little bit with progressively more and more important projects, and finally you get an MCU film, which like Jeff said, that is their big, or was it Fat Stacks who said that? Sorry, that's their big moneymaker. That's their cash cow. So for them to um, so for them to put an MCU film out on premiere is a big deal.
Hmm.
And but they've been building up to it such that, like you said, they thought they could get away with we'll just put it on Premiere Access and nobody's going to say boo about it. And if they do, we'll just say, well, how dare you? It's a pandemic. We're trying to keep people safe.
Right. And also, you signed a contract. You can't go back on your contract.
Right. And what happens is also there's a few things that go into this, and I'm on neither side, but I think the biggest thing should just been to pay her. They Disney has buku amounts of money. Like this movie did $215 million worldwide, and that's including streaming numbers. I think streaming numbers were like uh 60 million from Disney Plus, 80 million from the box office, and then 78 for overseas. So it did $215 million. Pay her her money, just be done with it. You should have been paying people up until then. That way you wouldn't have had to worry about going backwards to pay retro pay for people. But like, oh well, you paid her, then I should rightfully get paid. You should have been doing that from the beginning. Um, I am in some of the same mind Casey is, where a lot of their stuff is high budget, like the Mandalorian, for example, was movie quality visual effects. It was just movie quality through and through for a TV series. While it did amazing, it's also very expensive for each episode. Um, Here's my thing. I do understand why they put it on Disney Plus as well as in theaters, because obviously, once again, we're still in the pandemic. But also, the movie wasn't as important as it would have been if this movie came out before Endgame, because spoiler alert, she dies in Endgame. There
Hmm.
wasn't this that would add to the overall MCU. You know what I'm saying? Like what was going on. Like it wasn't that detrimental. Like, oh, like if I didn't, I just wanted to go to the movies, but I could have waited to see it on DVD or something. Um,
No, I think that's a really good point.
yeah. So, but once again, just pay her the money. Like it, just get this. This shouldn't even have been a thing.
Did you want to interject here, Fast Ass? Because there's something I want to say, but I want you to get a word in case you were waiting.
Go ahead. I'll wait because my response is gonna be kind of interesting.
Well, there were two things I wanted to point out. Is like when Jeff says just pay her money because you made so much money. Like this is a conversation I had with my fiance the other day. Like when Jeff Bezos' rocket took off, or whatever. It was like this man has $1 billion. He could have easily like solved so many world crises, but he decided to go to space. It's like you don't get $1 billion by giving that money away. Like that's just kind of the fact of it. Like if I had that kind of money, I don't got no problem paying everybody who helped me get there, right? But then I wouldn't have $1 billion. And I think that's what Disney is. They're a company that routinely makes $1 billion. So like they're never going to be like, you know what, the easiest path here is to pay someone what they're owed. Like that's just not their philosophy. Like unless like there's no better way to get more money down the road, right? And they may find out that that's the case. Like you're stirring up a bunch of problems that you probably don't need. Maybe, like we don't know yet. Like this could just be Scarlett Johansson fussing, and like she really doesn't have any recourse to stop Disney from screwing her because Disney can do whatever they want because of how much money they make and hoard, right? But the other point about kind of where this movie sits in the timeline, I said this on the Marvel podcast when we actually talked about the Black Widow. This movie did kind of feel like an afterthought. Yes, it's a big MCU movie, and like so they can simultaneously be like, okay, this is an MCU movie that we can put on Premier Access as our final test, like Rachel said, but also it's super late. Like it belongs much earlier in the timeline than what we're dealing with now. Like it's not a Phase 4 film. This was from like the previous phase, or maybe the one before that even. I don't even know. Like it's the timeline is like way off kilter for it, and like the movie only got
Sacrificial lamb.
right, exactly. Like it really only got made because everybody else was getting solo projects and ScarJo had been there from the beginning, and people were kind of complaining and seeing like why wouldn't you give Black Widow her own thing? And like after they kill the character off, they're like, why? Well, here you go, right? It was like a Princess and the Frog situation. I made that comparison before. Where like there's all of these Disney princesses and you don't have a black one. So let's, after we've already moved over to 3D animation, go back and make a 2D princess movie about a black one, which wasn't very good. I think that movie's actually terrible. So like yeah, like Rachel put it, a sacrificial lamb type movie. So like why? Of course it would be Black Widow that they do this experiment with, right? Because they didn't care about it enough. But that's all I wanted to add. But
Yeah.
Fast X, what did you want to go into?
Like, all right, me personally, I think timing, as pretty much everybody, it's timing that was pretty bad. So she lost a lot of money due to timing. If they would have done this earlier before Infinity War, it would have been a different story. You know what I mean? So she wouldn't have lost as much. But
Would this movie have ever come out before Infinity War? Like, was it made that long ago? I thought like it wasn't in production until
wasn't.
after. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It was.
He's saying if
But
it would have, if they
no,
would have.
no. And I'm just saying if it would have, like,
Right, okay.
like
Yeah.
everybody-
Right.
Like if everybody already had like Iron Man had a solo project. You see what I'm saying? How they built up Iron Man, they built up everybody else. Like if you would have put Black Widow somewhere in there way before Infinity War,
Like sometime after Iron Man 2 when she first showed up, right?
right? So like this deal wouldn't have existed. But the problem is, because I did a little digging when it came to this system, particularly theater and streaming, this is not going away. This is going to be a straight hybrid system that everybody's going to have to deal with. Why? Because eventually, regardless of how this whole pandemic ends, people aren't still gonna feel comfortable going out fully. Like I said before earlier, it might take another 4 or 5 years between certain things to be normal from 2020. So presumably 2024, 2025, because me personally, the world is so crippled. And everything is not like in full circle yet when it comes to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come to things being in theaters versus people staying at home, they haven't found out about the streaming model yet in order to pay people from the streaming model, because it is new. But everybody knows they already have their numbers for the theatrical version, how they can price that, how they can do that on that end. But when it comes to the streaming, it's a little different.
Yeah, because it's
But
so
when you
new.
Right. But when you think about what actors usually do when it comes to streaming, right? You notice in a lot of their contracts, they have, well, I want a part of this, I want a part of this, I want a part of this. I think Robert Downey Jr. was the one that did a lot of that. Like, he made a lot of money, but he also made a lot of money off the side with, like, apparel and the videos and this and that. Tom Hanks, I believe, did that too in a few of his in a lot of his contracts. But the whole point is, it's the way how the contract is wrote up. Now, mind you, this contract was probably done way before this happened. So this is kind of like untouched waters, per se. So to go back and redo the whole contract after everything was already dealt with, even though it's that's where you get the whole gray area right there.
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean? So now, all these other movies like Mulan and Soul and all that did come out. Probably a lot of that was already in the contract, stating certain things for those specific movies, knowing the fact that they wouldn't hit theaters anyway.
I remember
Because
I did see that Luca didn't want the Pixar didn't want to put Luca on streaming only. I know they wanted to.
Yeah, they wanted that to be in theaters.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, if you put it in theaters, like,
It's not going to do great.
I mean, you're really gonna do that and hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you just got to pick your poison, per se. And eventually you're going to have to do something where you're not going to make everybody happy, but there has to be a financial stability between theaters and the whole home release. And of course, there is still DVD release for those who still have DVDs,
Right.
as may be. So, I think what's going to end up happening, in my opinion, it's going to be the same thing how you used to watch a movie in theaters at a certain time and then it came out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to end up being a model where it's going to be in theaters for a certain amount of time, and then you're going to pay to either rent it off of Disney Plus or pay, like how you pay that $30 premium to watch the movie. I can definitely see a model where you're going to pay like a $10 to rent the movie off Disney Plus, and then maybe a couple 3 months down the line after that, then it's free.
Yeah, I think that's in place right now for me, if not Disney Plus, but I think Amazon does that with a lot of movies.
Right.
And then probably like Comcast does that with like their on-demand stuff still.
Right. So you're going to have a lot of models trying to follow, well, how do we make up the money with the actors? Because if we put it out in theaters, it's not going to do as good with the situation going on right now. So, okay. So let's say, how can we put this in a contract to compensate for the streaming part as well, and say, okay, well, what are the residuals can you get from the streaming aspect? So I think they haven't really found a formula for that yet, and I think that's what they're gonna work on. Because I'm gonna tell you, like, I don't see movies going totally to theaters like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because now people figured out, now I could just sit home and watch this too. Well, now I'd rather just sit home. I don't got to deal with people out there. And what's hurting the most are these theaters. That's what's gonna get hammered the most.
Oh yeah.
Because when you look at, I'm gonna use AMC as a stock price. I'm not gonna count like all what's happening with the retail investors and stuff, but I'm just gonna say, if it wasn't for AMC, could have gone under because of what's going on, because people aren't going out.
Yep.
I mean, that's just plain and simple, but people decided they wanted to save AMC. So obviously they haven't gone under, but you have also a lot of small theater chains that are not AMC that have closed because they don't get these releases. They don't get this. They don't get that. They don't get the, the food that people come in and pay for, or the drinks. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's have that watered down deal. Well, a lot of these places are going to be closed. Well, so what are people going to do? They're going to stay home and watch these movies when they can.
You're right.
I mean, stay home.
I mean,
that's
what I do for the most part.
I do know Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, that'll be exclusively in theaters.
Yeah, because their experiment's over. They sacrificed their lamb, and they're like, all right, now we'll go back to
and that's
normal.
what I mean. They knew they changed the game by doing a simultaneous release. It'd have been simple to say, hey, we're not going to give you $50 million, but this is what we can do because we're doing this. Like, I felt like that would have went a long way. I don't know what the conversation was. I don't know how it went, but for Kevin Feige to be embarrassed and angry, there must not have been any way where they tried to find like a middle ground.
And who knows how this lawsuit will go, right? Like, the fact that she had to file a lawsuit means that they weren't trying to hear anything. Like, they weren't trying to talk to her, right? So they're like, she has to go and fight them to get that money.
Which makes sense because the contract beforehand, you just can't go in there and just change everything like that.
Right, yeah, they have a contract. So they're probably not even afraid of the courts, right?
Right, because remember now, her lawyers and their lawyers had to hash out a certain type of payment. Okay, well, this is a worldly event that you can't really, you can't affect that. So you're going to tell people, hey, go out to the theaters and go watch my movie. Like, people are going to look at you like, I'm not going out there with this nonsense going on. Like, really? And like you said, too, the movie is more of the timing, I think, is made it an afterthought. Like, if you would have put this way earlier before Infinity War, it would have been a different story.
And I just want to address what Lampy was saying, because he's saying it was meant to come out ages ago, before she actually dies. It was originally meant to be before Infinity War. I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah.
It wasn't filmed by then.
Yeah, the thought was there, but this story wasn't created until after she had died. It was supposed to come out a year earlier, but that still would have been after Endgame.
Yeah, Infinity War is still several years before, I think, this movie project ever even started.
But the talk of her having a solo film was there, just not this story.
I actually think that would have been a perfect release bracket, but like somewhere between Infinity War and Endgame.
Exactly.
Because then we could have gone into Endgame knowing that she's settled her accounts.
Yeah, like,
we've seen her story, and then her, spoilers, sacrificing herself to save someone she loves, which is, I think exactly the end she would have wanted for herself. Then you would have to like have a different end credit scene on Black Widow, but I'm fine with that on balance. But yeah, I think in terms of the charted path of the MCU, Black Widow is such a weird anomaly right now, because you'll notice all of the things that are coming out in the MCU right now are weird things. It's Loki, it's WandaVision, it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and
we're getting up to so weird. That one's kind of
maybe not weird, but I mean, it's not necessarily as grounded.
And wizards.
Yeah, that's still.
But the series literally had no wizards in it. Like, it was. I think that show was actually very grounded for the other stuff. It's a weird sandwich, because like WandaVision is kind of out there, and Loki is like very metaphysical, and then we have Doctor Strange coming up soon too.
But Zemo, though. What about Zemo?
But right there, though, WandaVision sets up for the multiverse. Hence, you have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So and that's a perfect setup. Like, you got the side story of WandaVision and what's going on with her, and knowing that she can really be effective in the multiverse. Now you have Doctor Strange and the Man. So a lot of things kind of set up the way how they do a lot of these side stories in Disney Plus with, the Falcon, the Winter Soldier, and all that, and they're in the Flag Bearers and all that.
I just mean I mean that Black Widow is a sort of it feels more like an old guard MCU film, and I can tell they're going for more of a Jason Bourne style. That's the aesthetic they're going for with Black Widow, it just doesn't feel like it fits with the way the MCU is right now, and that's why I think I think at this point Disney had sort of like they just wanted it to be done, wipe their hands, throw it over their shoulder, and just get it out so they don't have to think about it anymore. And it doesn't have to be on their plate, when they're trying to move forward with other projects in the MCU with people who are not Scarlett Johansson.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's why their response to this has been so cavalier. And I honestly, I mean, Disney is first and foremost. They have a huge PR team and a huge team of lawyers. I don't think they would have said that. I don't think they would have had their response of sort of like, "How dare you, Scarlett Johansson?" I don't think they would have gone for that if they didn't think they could get away with it. And if Disney thinks it can get away with something, honestly, it probably can.
Now, mind
I'm
you,
inclined to agree.
the parks aren't even open yet. So, well, they're open, but not to like full
Full
capacity at times, I
capacity.
guess. But now, once the parks open, you think Disney has raked in the money yet? Sheesh. Just
Oh yeah,
wait
people.
until just wait until just wait until those parks are full at full capacity like it used to, and it's really gonna be something, because that's the thing right now with Disney. That is, when I look at the share price, is what's stopping Disney from really going over the top. Disney Plus is a caveat. It was a nice little icing on the cake, but of course the meat and potatoes of Disney are those parks. So
Yeah, let's keep that in mind going forward. That Disney will continue to be a problem
Right.
in the future in that way. But I mean, I want to say we kind of talked this point to death, maybe. Like we're all the way. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap the show up. Thanks so much to my three guests. Rachel, where can people find your work if they're looking for you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. Everything goes through my Twitter. Everything I ever write, all the videos I'm in, and it's my name at Rachel Kaiser, which I think is above my head. And so, yeah, if you want to read anything that I've written, I write the spoiled column for The Escapist, and everything else you can find on my Twitter. And if you want to see me again, an episode of Escape the Galaxy, which is the show I'm on with Marty and Omar, where we talk about Star Wars stuff, including this little guy here. A new episode of that goes up tomorrow, I believe.
Nice. Superman Jeff, where can people
Or
find you?
today.
Oh,
Today,
today.
sorry. It's Sunday.
You can find me at Superman Jeff across all social media. I'll be back on Twitch tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Siege. So come check that out. I'll also be on Super Smash Sunday with Sigma later on today. So definitely come through for that. And that's where we are.
Okay. Fat Sacks, where can people find you? What do you do on the internet?
you guys can find me at the Fat Stacks across all social media. I usually stream. I try to stream Monday through Thursday. I do the financial videos on Tuesdays. We talk about stocks, finance, and stuff like that. So Twitter, IG, TikTok. You guys can find me at Fat Stacks, as you can see right below, right there.
Nice. You guys can find me at SigmaGears9 on Twitch as well as Twitter. Follow the Twitter. Usually I'll post whatever thing I'm doing or working on at the moment. Should have a review drop in soon for 3MR on The Escapist. And some... the latest episode of the Breakout podcast that I do with Nick and Marty should be out. And I don't know. Follow Twitter. Later today, like Jeff said, Super Smash Sunday will be back at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on the Open Party Twitch channel, so follow that channel as well. Big news is going to be coming to you today in regards to that, so make sure you tune in. We have some really fun stuff planned regarding Super Smash Sunday. So we'll see you guys this afternoon. Thanks to everybody in the chat for tuning in and watching. We really appreciate it. Thanks once again to my three hosts. Really love it when you guys come through and we have these awesome conversations. That's it for episode 35. Peace.